You are propping the back of your house up. So if you get it wrong,
Guys, welcome back to the Verified Build. We are joined today by Jak of Dixons Engineering. Basically, Jak, can you just explain a bit about what you guys do and sort of what's gone on here at the build so far?
So we're a steel fabricator. We were tasked with the steel element of this job. The client, with yourselves, had already got the structural calculations carried out, which is always the first thing to do. From there, we've come and surveyed the house for the specific measurements. We've come in, cast two foundations just in the corners, installed the steel frame after obviously propping all this brickwork to open up this space, make it a lot bigger.
So was it not yourselves that did the calculations? Is that the engineer that comes out?
No, so the first step is always get a structural engineer to do that.
Yeah.
A structural engineer will look at everything, not just the steelwork element. So they'll look at your floor joists above us, the brickwork. The first step I would say is with your architect, get a structural engineer.
So when it comes to sort of opening a space up, can anyone open any space? Is there any point where you can or can't do those things?
I'd always use someone who's used to it because you are propping the back of your house up, basically. So if you get it wrong,
We were here actually when they were putting this in, and it was the first time I've ever seen this sort of thing happen. And I honestly didn't realize that you could basically hold the top of a house up whilst you remove bits from underneath.
That's the thing, you need to know how to prop, where to prop before you start ripping walls down.
When it comes to the steel itself, so is that just purely dictated by the engineer at that point?
Yeah, so the engineer will dictate the size of steel, how many bolts, what welds, etc., stuff like that for us. Within them confines, work out how long the posts need to be, how long the beams need to be to carry that specific space.
So do you work in tandem with the structural engineer to sort of get the right beams?
The structural engineer will give you a drawing, but it's normally with plus or minus half a metre.
Another thing that surprised me as well is kind of the amount of work that went into the foundation.
Every house tends to be different, and then every structural engineer tends to be different, which is a challenge, but it's good. I suppose it makes them more different.
In what way are they different?
Well, this design, which I'm sure you'll show later, it's a bit of a strange one with like a cantilever post, but they've done that to stop the house swaying because you're stripping right back to the walls. There's no brickwork return, so the house could effectively buckle left to right, which is why he's done these little L-shaped legs.
Is it purely just the steel you provide?
A lot of our customers are builders, so we just supply the steel and give them a couple of lads on site to help them with the steelwork element, because obviously you'll need impact wrenches. Sometimes you need grinders, welders, that kind of thing, when sometimes some stuff needs chopping and changing. We buy steel priced per tonne, and we cost it manufactured per tonne. Obviously a heavier beam takes longer to weld because it's bigger, takes longer to drill because it's thicker. So everything is done by the weights. Effectively, the bigger your steel is, the more it's going to cost.
Does that impact the labour then, I guess?
Yeah, so obviously the manufacture labour's more. It's harder to handle. We've got a small alleyway down here. If that beam was twice as heavy, you'd probably need twice as many men to try and get it down there. Sometimes, a lot of the time, there's no other option other than manpower to get them in position.
There's like a phased approach at this. You get the structural engineer out, you guys come in, and then it needs reviewing again before everything can go ahead.
Once you've excavated for your foundations, the building inspector needs to come out and check that your footings are adequate before you pour the concrete. Obviously, once you pour the concrete and got everything in place, the building inspector needs to come and check the steelwork before you enclose it with plasterboard. Obviously, you'll engage an architect and a structural engineer. Ideally, if they know each other, it's better. Then they need to come out at various stages through the build, but the ones I know about is after you've dug the holes and put the steel in, before you cover it up.
Is there any scenarios where you've been aware where something's been rejected?
Sometimes they'll come out and say, I'm not happy with that, just dig a little bit further, and you have to dig a bit further. But no, we've never had them come out after it's in place and say, no, that's no good.
Good. Are there any common challenges when someone's trying to open up a space that they've got to consider?
Obviously in this house, your steels are sat in front of the wall. You will have a nib in your running wall. A lot of people want that to be flush. It makes everything harder.
Yeah.
I can understand why it makes the job look a lot better. If you have to cut that masonry, when I was on about sway of the house, you've got no support, so then you sometimes have to have a ground beam running from the bottom of that leg to the bottom of that.
If you were to say, let's make that flush, is there still a vertical
Yes,
beam
you'd
that's
have to put a post in, but the post would have to...
Wow.
You'd obviously have to cut the brickwork, get your foundation under the existing brickwork, so you'd have to underpin the brickwork. The other challenge above us, cut the joist and put that up into the joist to increase head height, so that hopefully you don't have a boxed in beam. Sometimes some people will just shove them up to the joist which is a lot easier, but you end up with a bulkhead where the steel is. And obviously the same on that horizontal one, you'll have reduced head height. So we always try and lift them up.
And is that all taken into consideration at time of spec?
It's what the customer wants, really.
Okay.
But yes, it doesn't affect the calculations because you've still got the same weight.
Yeah.
This house is a complete refurb, it's not a problem. But
Yeah.
the more we push that beam up, it's going to affect the bedrooms and the bathrooms upstairs, because imagine it's going into where the skirting board is.
Could you, in theory, knock any wall through in the property? Or is
Anything can be done, it's just obviously cost.
And I guess that brings in an extra level of complexity to the install, right, at that point? Like,
Yeah, it is.
for example, to take away this back wall as well, you must be having steel.
Yeah, so there'd be a similar arrangement there. That steel would carry on, 2 new frames. Or foundations.
It's a lot more house to hold up as well.
Yes, yeah. We've done stuff before on like underground garages where the client didn't want to post in the middle of the garage, so he wanted his whole house, whole cellar just a clear span, which is about 12 metres.
I feel like we've covered everything there. People want to get in touch. Where do they go to speak to Dixons Engineering?
DixonsEngineeringLTD.com.
Jack, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Guys, thank you for watching this. To keep on top of the build, see the progress, and see how this whole open space comes along, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you again soon.